Hi and welcome everyone. If you are watching this video, then you have volunteered to help the Saratoga County League of Women Voters with National Voter Registration Day. We're so pleased to see you. Perhaps you're seeing this video after having attended our in-person training on September 14th, and this is a review for you. Perhaps you are seeing this for the first time, and I welcome you, if this is your first time, to go at your own pace. Pause this video at any time to take notes, or if you're lazy like I am, to pull out your phone and take a photograph of a slide with information you want to remember, and then day of, with your phone, you can go back through your pictures and remind yourself of any of these notes. So let's get started. We're so happy you're here. This is part of the League of Women Voters work to celebrate democracy. National Voter Registration Day is a non-partisan civic holiday since 2012, and we have registered millions of new voters. That nonpartisan part means an awful lot to us. League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, and you can see the picture of our volunteer. She is not talking to her neighbor who's filling out his voter registration form about party affiliation or her favorite candidates or what the issues are that matter to her. She's just happily celebrating the fact that he is registering to vote. Now, this will be you on September 28th. The morning you'll wake up, and if you're feeling fine, you're going to head down to the venue you're signed up to volunteer with. And if you're not feeling so well, call your venue coordinator so that the venue coordinator knows you've had a change of plans, and then take care of yourself for the rest of the day. Venue coordinators, if you're watching this video, we remind you to make sure all of the volunteers at your site have access to your telephone number so that they can talk to you first thing in the morning if they need to. Dress in a bright color. You'll notice the volunteers in this photograph are wearing bright colors, but you'll notice there's no slogan, there's no insignia. They're just celebrating voting. Again, nonpartisan, and grab a mask if you'd like and head out a little early to your venue. When you get there, you will have everything you need. Notice the table is there. You will see perhaps a banner to put up at your venue. First and foremost on your table will be the registration forms, but you'll also have a large manila envelope. This is actually a very important envelope. If anyone fills out their voter registration form with you that day and hands it to you, then the voter registration form goes in the big manila envelope, and we keep an eye on it at all times. Then the venue coordinators will then deliver it to the chairperson of the event, who will deliver them herself to the Board of Elections. So it's important to keep a good eye on it. Precious voter information in that envelope. There's also application to join the League of Women Voters, application for an absentee ballot. You might be approached that day by someone who is already registered to vote and has made the decision this year that they would like to mail in their ballot. So they can pick up an absentee ballot application from your table so that they can do that. There's information for Donate for Life for those folks who would like to be organ donors after death. Then there's supplies, the pins and tape, etc., and stickers. And from our experience, the stickers are popular. People like to say, I pledge to vote. I have registered to vote. And of course, there's a manual for reference. On all the tables in all the venues, you'll have quick access to some resources, more information. Should a voter present a question to you that you're not sure how to answer, you go through your manual, you'll find your answer right there. On the day that you are volunteering, you'll engage folks in conversation. They're walking past your table on their way into Stewart's or Ben & Jerry's or to work out at the Y or wherever your venue is, and you'll say hello. You'll answer questions about how to register to vote. You'll celebrate every newly registered voter. You're not telling them who to vote for, of course, but you're helping them to register. You'll notice the bullet point that says take nothing personally. Sometimes people just are on a beeline to get their coffee at Stewart's. So if they don't engage you back, that's okay. They just need some caffeine. We don't take anything personally on the day we're volunteering. If you don't have the answer to a question, you're not sure what the manual is suggesting to you, you can always direct a would-be voter to vote411.org. And lastly, we invite you to have fun on the day of National Voter Registration. So who can register to vote? U.S. citizens, 18 or older on the day of the general primary or other election in which they want to vote. Do you know older teens now in New York State who are 16 or 17 can pre-register to vote? And you need to have been a resident at your present address for the last 30 days before the election. But I will tell you what to do if a voter has moved and can't register within the 30-day window. Hang on for that. Convicted felons who are out of prison, who are on probation, or who are on parole and have been granted a partial pardon may also register to vote this year. Can't register to vote if you have the right to vote somewhere else, or if I have been adjudged mentally incompetent by the court, they don't want me registering to vote. If you were with us in person, we took a few minutes to actually walk through the registration form itself so that you could put yourself in the shoes of a would-be voter. So with that in mind, let's walk through the registration form itself so you'll feel confident to answer any questions folks might have for you. This is the top of the registration form itself. And let me tell you, it's like an answer key to the quiz. Almost all the information that you would need to know is found right on the form. Who would fill out this form and what you have to do to register, where to deliver or send the form. There's telephone numbers and websites to answer questions, how to verify your identity, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but I want to point out it's right there on the registration form. So why would you use the registration form? I used it last year, even though I've been registered to vote for many, many years now, because my husband and I moved. So I used the registration form to notify the Board of Election of our new address. Changes of address have to be registered. They have to be received at least 25 days before the election itself so that they can be processed by the Board of Election and entered in the records in time for that election. I also filled out a registration form this year because I took my husband's name. If you have a change of name, you will fill out a new registration form. Maybe you want to become a member of a political party, or you are a member of a political party and you decide you don't want to be a member of a political party, or you want to change your political party membership. You would use this registration form to do those things. If you wanted to fill out the form to officially be an organ donor upon your death, you would fill out this form. And of course, fill out this form if you are registering to vote. Somebody comes up to you and they say, my name has changed, but I forgot to fill out the form. Now what do I do? Well, you tell them to go to the polls. And they're going to sign their former name in the usual place, and then they'll sign their new name above it. So this is the part of the registration form where folks are putting in their name, address, voting history, voting information, etc. Now, a couple of areas to pay attention to. Area marked as number 5 is for gender. This year, people can leave that blank. They could put an X or a U, but I also want to point out to you on the left-hand margin that items 5, 6, and 7, that's gender, phone, and email, are all optional. They don't have to be completed. You'll also notice numbers 10 and 11. You might have questions about that. Those are the areas where the form asks you to say, hey, have you voted for? Yes or no? And do you remember the year? Some folks will not remember the last year that they voted in. It's okay to leave that blank as well. And you'll see there's both where you live, and if folks have a PO box, they could put that there. Sometimes folks will ask you, what if I have two addresses, or what if I have no address? And the two categories that fill for those questions usually are for college students. And in New York State, a college student can either vote absentee ballot where their parents live, or they can register to vote in their college community. The homeless can also register to vote. If you are approached with that question, you would instruct that person to write the word homeless above the section where they would usually write the address where they live. And then that person can do a couple of other things. The person can write down the cross streets where they usually camp to determine where their polling place would be, or they can write a shelter in which they are receiving their mail. Okay, so here's where I'm circling back to what if I moved within 30 days of an election and I forgot to change my registration? No problem. That voter can request an affidavit ballot from the Board of Elections or from the new polling place. So they are still able to vote. All right, another part of the registration form. You'll notice 12 is if the voting information is changed, like your name or address. In 13, you'll notice that the form requires some ID, New York State Department of Motor Vehicle number, or the last 4 digits of the Social Security number, or there are some other ways that a voter can offer ID. I'll get to those in a moment. 14, if a person wants to enroll in a political party or they don't, you have an option to check one of those boxes. And I do want to direct your attention to the right side, number 16, where there is the affidavit where they swear or affirm that all the information in the voter registration form is correct. And so they would sign the voter registration form in that area. So you're like, okay, so how many forms of ID do I need? So it's either the license plate number or the 4 digits of your Social Security number. Or if you don't have either one of those to share, you can use any photo ID plus either a current utility bill or a bank statement, paycheck, government check. You'll see the list on this slide of other acceptable forms to verify your address. So you would copy one of those forms of ID to include with the voter registration form. So I want you to think about that on behalf of those would-be voters. They have completed the voter registration form, which is a piece of paper that gets folded and sealed shut. But if they have included a copy of one of these other forms of ID, that means they're putting a piece of paper on top of their registration form, folding it up. We want to remind them, tape the sides of their registration form at that point, because any additional piece of paper that's been inserted could fall out in the mail. It makes sense, right? But sometimes people forget to do that. So it's a good thing to remind them. We're showing you a picture of a New York State driver's license. In this case, it's a learner's permit, to indicate that there are 2 kinds of numbers that could be found on your license. The first is your ID number. That's the number that would go on the registration form. But there's also a document number, not to be confused with the ID number. So this indicates where that document number is found and where the ID number is found. And conveniently, it says ID next to the ID number. So folks are filling out the registration forms at your table, and they may notice section 15, which is optional. They might be filling out the registration form, and they know in that moment they do want to request an absentee ballot application. So there's a box to check right on the registration form. The Board of Elections then will mail them their absentee ballot application. Absentee ballot. And there's also a box to check if they're so delighted to be engaged in democracy that they know they also want to volunteer to be an election day worker. There's another box to check there. The voter will then sign the form, and I showed you where in a previous slide. If the voter, for some reason, is unable to sign the form, any mark the voter makes is acceptable. And if a voter has a disability of any kind, the Board of Elections will accommodate disabilities so that anyone can vote. It's going to be so important to remind the person registering to vote to sign the registration form. It is one of the most common reasons why a registration form could be discarded, because the voter forgot to sign it. So get their John Hancocks on their forms. I like this image that we found from Deposit Photos, because we imagine that at this point, it might feel like an awful lot of information that we're trying to cram into your skull in a short amount of time. But I promise you, you don't have to memorize everything. Vote411.org will be your trusted resource on National Voter Registration Day. You will not be alone at any venue. You'll probably be paired with somebody who's done this many times before. You can always call your either venue coordinator, or you can call the numbers on the registration form, and you'll have the manual. All you need right at your fingertips. So here again, places to call if you have questions. You can visit the websites for elections.newyork.gov. And that is the New York State Board of Elections website. Again, vote411.org. And lastly, on your registration form, there's an opportunity for you to fill out the Donate to Life, to be an organ and tissue donor after death. Here's some important dates to remember this year. The registration deadline is Friday, October 8th, 2021. To submit an absentee ballot application, you can either mail that application by October 26th, 2021, has to be marked that day. Or if you go in person, you can do that right up until November 1st. Early voting starts on October 23rd, goes right through Halloween, and the general election this year, Tuesday, November 2nd. We also would like to advise would-be voters that they'll get their ballot on the day that they're voting, and they'll see the candidates that they're voting for on the front of the ballot. But on the back, there are back of the ballot initiatives this year. And whereas we won't talk about the pros and cons of the initiatives, we're not there to educate anyone about the initiatives. We're there to make sure that voters know that there are back of the ballot initiatives, and not to ignore or miss them because they didn't turn up over their ballot. For more information about those initiatives, we can again direct them to vote411.org. The website for the League of Women Voters also has resources for a voter to become more informed about those initiatives so that they can make an informed decision. We would just hate for them to skip it because they didn't know that there were initiatives to vote for on the back of the ballot. That's it for our training video. We're so grateful that you're willing to show up and celebrate democracy with us. Don't hesitate to reach out. A lot of resources on the League of Women Voters website. Bye all.